The air in San Francisco's Grand Meridian Ballroom shimmered with ambition, the kind that clung to crystal chandeliers and sparkled in the clink of champagne flutes. It was a night where dreams were pitched and fortunes were made, where the elite of Silicon Valley gathered to anoint the next tech prodigy. At the center of it all stood Audrey Sinclair, a woman whose brilliance outshone the room's opulence, though few noticed. Her skin, a rich mahogany, glowed under the soft lighting, and her eyes, sharp with intellect, scanned the crowd with quiet confidence. She was no stranger to these spaces yet. She always felt like an outsider, a black woman navigating a sea of privilege that rarely acknowledged her tide. Audrey, raised in the vibrant pulse of Brooklyn, had always been a creator. As a child, she'd sketch interfaces on napkins, dreaming of designs that could bridge human need with digital elegance. Her mother, a schoolteacher with a voice like gospel and a will like iron, taught her to build with purpose, to never beg for a seat at any table. By her mid-20s, Audrey had carved her place in New York's design world, her portfolio a tapestry of intuitive apps and sleek branding that whispered innovation. Her latest project brought her to San Francisco consulting for VitalSync, a health tech startup poised to revolutionize patient care. And at its helm was Samuel Reed, the man who would unravel her heart. Samuel was Silicon Valley's golden son, a billionaire at 32, with eyes like a winter sky and a charisma that could bend rooms to his will. His hair, a tousled chestnut, framed a face that carried both Ivy League polish and a hunger for legacy. VitalSync was his brainchild, a platform to connect patients with real-time health data, but its branding lacked soul. That's where Audrey came in. She wasn't just a designer, she was a visionary, her mock-ups transforming Samuel's code into a story that investors could feel. They worked late into the night, their Zoom calls a dance of ideas, her wireframes meeting his algorithms, her critiques sharpening his vision. Somewhere between pixel grids and pitch decks, their connection deepened. It began with a glance that lingered too long, a laugh that felt like a secret shared. Samuel called her Audrey with a softness that made her name sound like a melody. "You're my compass," he'd said once, his voice low over a midnight call, and she believed him. She let herself fall, not recklessly, but with the quiet surrender of someone who trusted the ground beneath her. Their first kiss was in his loft, the San Francisco skyline glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. His lips tasted of bourbon and promise, and when he pulled her close, she felt like the center of his world. They kept it hidden, not her choice, but his. "Investors don't get nuance," he'd murmured, buttoning his shirt after a stolen night. "This world's too pale for us to be careless." She nodded, swallowing the sting because his forehead kisses and late-night texts felt like enough. The night of the pitch event was supposed to be their triumph. Audrey had rehearsed her lines until they flowed like poetry, her navy blazer tailored to her frame, her curls pinned with precision. She stood beside Samuel, her tablet displaying a mock-up that married elegance with function, a design that could make VitalSync a household name. The room buzzed with venture capitalists, their eyes gleaming with the promise of profit. Samuel, in a charcoal suit that hugged his broad shoulders, exuded confidence, his smile a beacon. Audrey felt the weight of their shared work, the months of late nights, and whispered dreams pulsing in her chest. Then came the question, sharp as a blade. A venture capitalist, his tie a slash of crimson, leaned forward. "So who's she? Your assistant or something?" The room chuckled, a ripple of condescension that pricked Audrey's skin. She turned to Samuel, expecting him to correct the insult, to lift her up as his equal, his partner in creation. Instead, his lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "She's just the design side," he said, his voice smooth as glass. "She helps out." The words landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through Audrey's soul. Not co-creator, not lead designer, not even partner, just helps out. Her heart didn't shatter loudly. It cracked like porcelain under pressure, silent, but irreparable. She stood frozen, her fingers tightening around the tablet, her breath caught in a storm she refused to let break. The room moved on, investors nodding Samuel's charm, carrying the pitch forward. But Audrey felt invisible, reduced to a footnote in a story she'd helped write. She didn't make a scene. That would have been too easy, too expected. Instead, she waited until the applause faded, until the cameras turned away. She unplugged her tablet, handed it to Samuel without a word, and met his gaze. "You really said that?" she asked, her voice low, steady, a blade wrapped in velvet. He glanced around, wary of prying eyes. "Audrey, you know how these rooms are. You don't fit their profile. It's branding." Her eyes narrowed, cutting through his excuse. "So, I'm not marketable." He exhaled, his jaw tight. "That's not what I meant. We're building something real here. You know what's at stake." She stepped back, her lips trembling but her spine straight. "I thought I was part of what's real. But I guess I only matter behind closed doors." He didn't answer, his silence louder than any apology. She picked up her bag, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she walked out, each step a reclamation of her worth. Back in her hotel room, Audrey stood before the mirror, her reflection a map of resilience and betrayal. She didn't cry. Tears were for those who doubted themselves, and she refused to let Samuel's words erode her truth. She packed her suitcase with precision, folding her blazer, her dreams, her trust. She didn't answer his texts, didn't wait for an explanation. 2 weeks later, in the quiet of a Brooklyn bathroom, a pregnancy test confirmed what her body had whispered. 2 pink lines stared back at her, a truth as undeniable as her strength. She placed a hand on her stomach, her voice a whisper of defiance. "You're not a mistake." "He is." Audrey didn't return to San Francisco. She didn't chase Samuel's shadow or beg for his validation. Instead, she boarded a plane to Atlanta, a city pulsing with possibility, where the tech scene was rising and the air felt like freedom. She rented a modest apartment in Midtown, its windows catching the southern sun, its walls a canvas for her new beginning. She didn't tell Samuel about the child growing inside her. He'd made his choice in that ballroom, and she'd made hers in the silence that followed. Have you ever poured your heart into someone, only to watch them dismiss you when the spotlight turned? Have you stood tall while the world tried to shrink you? This is Audrey's story, a testament to dignity in the face of betrayal. If her courage resonates with you, if you've ever walked away to protect your worth, share your story in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, and join us as we follow Audrey's journey, not for revenge, but for the quiet power of rebuilding a life on her own terms. Atlanta's skyline glittered like a promise, kept its towers rising against a peach-hued dusk. For Audrey Sinclair, this city was more than a refuge. It was a reclamation. The apartment she'd chosen in Midtown was small, its hardwood floors creaking with character, its windows framing a view of possibility. She'd left Brooklyn behind, not out of fear, but out of a fierce determination to root herself where memories of Samuel Reed couldn't reach. Here, in the heart of a city pulsing with black excellence and tech ambition, she would build a life for herself and the child she carried, a life woven from resilience and love. Audrey was no stranger to hard work. Her mother's lessons echoed in her bones: build, don't beg. Create, don't crumble. In Brooklyn, she'd honed her craft, designing interfaces that felt like conversations, branding that spoke to the soul. Now in Atlanta, she was a freelancer, her laptop a lifeline to clients who valued her vision. But the tech world wasn't kind to a black woman, especially one whose pregnancy was beginning to show. She faced raised eyebrows in virtual meetings, subtle dismissals from clients who assumed her focus would waver. Yet Audrey's designs were flawless, her pitches sharp, her deadlines met with a precision that silenced doubters. She wasn't just good, she was undeniable. Her pregnancy was a quiet revolution, each kick a reminder of the life she was forging. She'd stand in her bathroom barefoot, on cool tiles, tracing the curve of her belly in the mirror. "We've got this, you and me," she'd whisper, her voice a vow. The loneliness came in waves, especially at night, when the city's hum couldn't drown out the ache of betrayal. But she had Maya, a fellow designer she'd met at a local tech meetup. Maya, with her quick laugh and unapologetic dreadlocks, became Audrey's anchor. Over coffee at a Decatur cafe, Maya would listen as Audrey poured out her fears, not of motherhood, but of raising a child in a world that might not see her worth. "You're not alone," Maya would say, her eyes fierce. "You're building a legacy." When labor came, it was as fierce as Audrey herself. In a sterile Atlanta hospital room, she gripped the bed rails, her breath a rhythm of defiance. No one held her hand. No one paced outside the door. But she didn't need them. At 4:12 a.m., Skylar Monroe Sinclair entered the world, her cry a declaration, her eyes a mirror of her father's winter blue gaze. Audrey held her daughter close, her heart swelling with a love so vast it eclipsed the pain of the past. "We did it, baby," she whispered, her lips brushing Skylar's tiny forehead. "We did it." The first year was a blur of milk stains and midnight feedings of client calls squeezed between naps and diaper changes. Audrey's body bore the weight of motherhood stretch marks, mapping her strength, exhaustion, etching lines around her eyes. But her mind remained sharp, her designs a lifeline. She coded landing pages while Skylar slept, her tiny breaths a metronome. She studied UX trends on her phone during 2 a.m., feedings her ambition unyielding. Some nights she collapsed on the couch, Skylar's warmth against her chest, and wondered if she was enough. Then Skylar would giggle, her brown skin glowing in the morning light, and Audrey knew she was more than enough. She was everything. Skylar was her mother's daughter, with a focus that belied her age, and a smile that could melt the hardest day. But she had her father's eyes, a fact Audrey tried to ignore until it became impossible. At 3, Skylar began asking questions, her voice small but piercing. "Mommy, why don't I have a daddy like Jada at daycare?" They were in their new apartment, a 2-bedroom with sunlight spilling through wide windows, plants lining the sills. Audrey knelt, her heart catching. "Some kids have daddies, some don't," she said, her voice steady. "But you've got me, and I love you enough for 2. Skylar frowned, clutching a drawing of 3 stick figures, one for her, one for Audrey, and a blank space. "But what if I want a daddy too?" Audrey swallowed the lump in her throat. "Then you pray for someone good enough to deserve you." Samuel's name was never spoken, but his shadow lingered. Audrey would see his face in headlines. Forbes 30 under 30 TechCrunch features, LinkedIn posts with thousands of likes. VitalSync was soaring, built on the branding she'd crafted, the ideas she'd shaped. Each time his smile appeared, she'd close the app, her chest tight. It wasn't jealousy. It was the ache of being erased, of knowing her work fueled his success, while her name was forgotten. She didn't block him. She didn't need to. She wasn't hiding. He just wasn't looking. Maya was her shield against the past. At a tech meetup in Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward, Maya introduced Audrey to a nonprofit that paired single mothers with tech retraining and microgrants. Audrey didn't need the training. Her skills were razor sharp, but the exposure was a lifeline. Her name began circulating in Atlanta's tech scene, not as a whisper, but as a force. One day, the nonprofit's director, a woman with a warm smile and a no-nonsense braid, pulled Audrey aside. "There's a tech gala in San Francisco next month," she said. "They want consultants who've built something from nothing. That's you." Audrey hesitated. San Francisco was Samuel's territory, and Skylar's questions about her father were growing louder. But something, pride perhaps, or defiance, made her say yes. The night before the gala, Audrey sat on the floor braiding Skylar's hair. The apartment smelled of shea butter and lavender, the TV humming with cartoons. Skylar, now 5, twirled in her glittery sneakers. "Mommy, do I look fancy?" Audrey smiled, her heart swelling. "You look unstoppable." Skylar giggled. "Will there be other kids?" "There's a playroom," Audrey said, "but you can stay with me for a bit." She laid out her navy jumpsuit, a gold locket Skylar had given her last Christmas, dangling from her neck. Inside was a drawing of them, 2 figures holding hands. Audrey stared at it, her resolve hardening. She didn't know what San Francisco held, but she knew who she was. The gala venue was a cathedral of ambition, its chandeliers casting prisms across polished floors. Skylar clutched Audrey's hand, her eyes wide with wonder. Audrey's name badge read, "Audrey Sinclair, Senior, UI Consultant, no qualifiers, no diminutives." They stepped into the ballroom, the air thick with power and perfume. Audrey scanned the crowd, her posture regal, her presence a quiet challenge. Then it happened. A wineglass tilted a man across the room, froze. Samuel Reed, older now, his chestnut hair flecked with silver, his eyes locking onto Skylar's. His world stopped, and Audrey's breath caught. He saw them, and for the first time, she saw fear in his gaze. The San Francisco gala pulsed with the rhythm of ambition, its chandeliers casting a golden glow over a sea of tailored suits and whispered deals. Audrey Sinclair stood at the edge of the ballroom, her navy jumpsuit a quiet defiance against the room's ostentatious shimmer. Her daughter Skylar clung to her hand, her glittery sneakers catching the light as she gazed at the swirling crowd. Audrey's presence was a statement. Her name badge, Audrey Sinclair Senior, UI Consultant, bore no qualifiers, no apologies. She was here not to impress, but to be. Her chin lifted, her eyes scanning the room with the calm of a woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. 5 years had passed since she'd walked away from Samuel Reed, the man whose betrayal had cracked her heart like porcelain. In Atlanta, she'd woven a life of resilience, her designs a tapestry of brilliance, her daughter a beacon of joy. Skylar, now 5, was a mirror of Audrey's strength, her brown skin glowing with the warmth of a southern sun, her questions about her father growing sharper with each passing day. Audrey had shielded her from the truth, not out of shame, but out of a fierce need to protect her peace. Yet here, in this glittering cage of power, the past had found her. Across the room, Samuel Reed stood frozen, a wineglass tilted in his hand, his winter blue eyes locked on Skylar. The years had etched fine lines at the corners of his mouth, his chestnut hair now flecked with silver, but his presence still commanded the space. He was Vital Sync's golden son, a billionaire whose health tech empire had soared on the wings of Audrey's designs. Yet the sight of Skylar, her curls, a cascade of midnight, her eyes an echo of his own, unraveled him. His breath caught his world tilting as logic wrestled with instinct. Could she be his? The question burned, but the answer was in her face, a mirror he couldn't deny. Audrey felt his gaze like a current electric and unwelcome. She tightened her grip on Skylar's hand, her heart racing, but her face a mask of composure. She'd known this moment might come, had braced for it, in the quiet of Atlanta nights. But its weight was heavier than she'd imagined. Samuel's eyes flickered to her, a storm of recognition and regret swirling within them. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. Her nod was subtle, a challenge wrapped in grace, as she placed a protective hand on Skylar's back. "Mommy." Skylar whispered, her voice a soft melody. "Why's that man staring at us?" Audrey bent down, her lips brushing Skylar's forehead. "Just someone I used to know," she said, her voice steady as stone. She guided Skylar toward the drinks table. Her steps measured her posture, a fortress. Samuel's body moved before his mind could catch up, cutting through the crowd, ignoring the murmurs of his name. "Audrey," he called, his voice raw, unguarded. She paused, turning slowly, her eyes unyielding. "Yes," she said, her tone a blade honed by years of silence. He stood 2 feet away, the ballroom's noise fading into a distant hum. His gaze dropped to Skylar, then back to Audrey, his throat tight. "She's your daughter," he said, not a question but a plea for truth. Audrey's expression didn't waver. "Her name is Skylar." He crouched, his eyes softening wet with something he couldn't name. "Hey, Skylar," he said, his voice gentle as a breeze. Skylar tilted her head, her curls bouncing. "Do I know you?" His laugh was choked, a sound of awe and ache. "I don't think so, but you look like someone I used to know." Skylar glanced at Audrey. "Mommy, who is he?" Audrey's heart thudded, but her voice remained calm. "A friend from a long time ago." She nodded toward the drinks table. "Sky, go grab that mango juice you like. I'll be right here." Skylar skipped off, her sneakers flashing. Samuel stood, his hands trembling. "She's mine," he said, not a question this time. Audrey didn't correct him, her silence a weight he couldn't bear. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice breaking. She met his gaze, unflinching. "Because I didn't want your apology, Samuel. I wanted your respect, and you made it clear I didn't fit your world." His face twisted, a flicker of shame crossing his features. "I was young, Audrey. I was scared. I thought I was doing what I had to." She cut him off, her voice low but piercing. "You mocked me in front of men who already saw me as less. You chose their approval over my truth." He swallowed, his eyes searching hers. "I didn't mean to erase you." She stepped closer, her presence a quiet storm. "You didn't just erase me, Samuel. You erased us, me, my work, my heart. I left before I begged for scraps. That's the difference between us. You wanted control. I wanted peace." Skylar returned, her fingers sticky with juice, her grin wide. "Mommy, can we see the robots later?" Audrey's smile was a beacon, softening the tension. "After I speak, baby." Samuel leaned down, his voice gentle. "Bye, Skylar." She waved, polite but curious. "Bye, mister." Audrey turned, her heels clicking, as she led Skylar away, her spine a line of unyielding grace. Samuel watched them go, his heart pounding like a drum, each beat a reminder of what he'd lost. He didn't return to his table. Instead, he found a corner near the ballroom's exit, his mind spiraling. The gala continued, a blur of laughter and ambition, but Samuel was elsewhere, replaying the night he'd dismissed Audrey, the night he'd chosen image over integrity. He saw her face, the quiet crack in her eyes, the way she'd walked away without a word. And now, Skylar, his daughter, a truth he hadn't earned. Her smile, her curls, her fearless curiosity, they were Audrey's, but her eyes were his, a mirror of his failures. Audrey took the stage later that evening, her voice steady as she spoke about design as a bridge between technology and humanity. The crowd listened, captivated by her clarity, her passion. Samuel watched from the shadows, his chest tight. She was everything he'd failed to see. Brilliant, resilient, whole. Skylar sat in the kids' zone, her notebook filled with doodles, oblivious to the storm brewing in her mother's heart. When Audrey stepped off the stage, she didn't look for Samuel. She didn't need to. Her world was complete, built on her own terms. But Samuel couldn't let go. That night in his San Francisco penthouse, he typed her name into every platform he could find. No public accounts, no traces. She'd erased herself from his world, a deliberate act of survival. He called an old colleague, his voice urgent. "She's in Atlanta," they said, "doing design consulting, raising a kid. Don't expect her to answer you." He opened his email, typed a subject line, "Please, Audrey." He wrote, deleted, wrote again. Finally, he sent a single line, "I saw her. I saw you. I need to talk." He waited, his heart a fragile thing, but no reply came. The next morning, his phone buzzed. Audrey's response was one sentence, sharp and final. "You made your choice. Respect mine." It wasn't anger, wasn't hate, just a boundary, clear as glass. Samuel stared at the screen, his empire meaningless in the face of her truth. He booked a flight to Atlanta. No suit, no assistant, just a man chasing a chance he didn't deserve. Atlanta's summer air was thick with possibility, the kind that clung to the skin like a lover's promise. The city hummed with life, street vendors calling, music spilling from open windows, the scent of magnolias weaving through the breeze. For Audrey Sinclair, Atlanta was home, a sanctuary where she'd rebuilt her world after Samuel Reed's betrayal. Her midtown apartment, now filled with Skylar's laughter and the soft glow of lamplight, was a testament to her strength. But the past had followed her, arriving uninvited in the form of a man who once broke her heart. Samuel Reed stepped off the plane at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, his usual armor of tailored suits replaced by jeans and a hoodie. His chestnut hair was tousled, his eyes heavy with a weight he couldn't name. He wasn't the billionaire CEO today, not the golden son of Silicon Valley. He was a man haunted by a 5-year-old girl with his eyes and a woman whose dignity he'd failed to honor. Atlanta felt foreign, its rhythm unfamiliar, but it was where Audrey and Skylar were, and that was enough to pull him across the country. He found the community center where Audrey volunteered, a modest brick building in the heart of Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward. It was a place of creation, where single mothers learned coding, where children painted dreams on canvas. Samuel stood outside, his hands in his pockets, watching mothers and children stream through the doors. He didn't knock, didn't announce himself. He just waited, the humid air pressing against his skin, his heart a drumbeat of hope and fear. Audrey saw him through the center's window, her mint tea cooling in her hand. She froze, her breath catching at the sight of him, disheveled, unguarded, a far cry from the polished CEO who'd dismissed her. She stepped outside, her navy sundress, swaying, her eyes sharp. "You flew here?" she said, her voice a quiet challenge. He nodded, his throat tight. "I needed to." She crossed her arms. "I didn't invite you." "I know," he said, his gaze steady. 5 minutes, Audrey. That's all I'm asking." She studied him, her heart a battlefield of memory and resolve. Skylar was inside, her laughter floating from the art room. Audrey sighed, pointing to a bench under an elm tree across the street. "Speak," she said, her tone firm, but not unkind. They sat, the distance between them, a silent boundary. Samuel rubbed his hands together, his voice low. "I'm sorry," he said, the words heavy with years of regret. "For erasing you, for pretending you didn't matter, for choosing their laughter over your truth, and for not looking for you when you left." Audrey tilted her head, her eyes searching his. "For what else?" He took a breath, his voice breaking. "For not being there for Skylar." Her lips tightened, a flicker of pain crossing her face. "You didn't know, because I didn't tell you," she said, her voice calm but piercing. "I watched you fold under pressure, Samuel. You didn't flinch when they laughed at me. You flinched at the idea of standing beside me. That told me everything." He swallowed, his eyes wet. "I was scared," he admitted. "I thought I had to choose between my image and you. I chose wrong." She leaned forward, her voice a whisper of steel. "You threw me away to protect a room of men who'd never see you as their equal, not with my hand in yours." He stayed silent, her words cutting deeper than any argument. "I didn't need your name," she said. "I needed your loyalty. I wasn't going to raise a child around someone who hid me like shame." Samuel's shoulders sagged, the weight of her truth anchoring him. "What was she like as a baby?" he asked, his voice soft, almost afraid. Audrey's gaze softened, just for a moment. She cried, like she was declaring war. "Colic for 6 months, didn't sleep through the night until her first birthday. But she always reached for me even before she could speak. She knew I was her world." Samuel blinked, his throat tight. "I missed it all." Audrey's voice was steady. "Yes, and she didn't." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I've spent 5 years chasing awards, closing deals, and not once did I feel whole. Not without you." Audrey's jaw tightened. "This isn't about your guilt, Samuel. It's about her, the girl I protected while you played king." He nodded, his eyes fixed on the ground. "Can I see her again?" Audrey didn't answer immediately. She stood, her shadow falling across him. "Be at the center tomorrow, 3:30. No gifts, no promises. Just show up." He nodded, his heart a fragile thing. "I will." The next day, Samuel was there, standing under the center's awning, his jeans worn, his sneakers scuffed. He didn't approach the door, didn't seek attention. Skylar emerged, her unicorn backpack, bouncing, her eyes lighting up. "Hi, mister," she said, tilting her head. Samuel crouched, his smile tentative. "Hey, Skylar. Cool backpack." She grinned. "It's unicorns." Audrey watched from the doorway. Her arms crossed her heart, a tangle of caution and curiosity. She didn't speak, just drove away, leaving Samuel standing in the fading light. He returned every weekday, rain or shine, a quiet figure under the awning. He brought no flowers, no grand gestures, just presence. He helped a boy pick up a spilled sketchbook, fixed a wobbly chair, read to the younger kids when a volunteer was late. Audrey noticed her eyes catching the way he listened to Skylar's stories, the way he let her lead. One afternoon, Skylar ran to her, a cardboard spaceship in hand. "Look, Mommy." He helped Samuel, stood behind glue on his fingers, a marker cap in his pocket. "She's got engineering instincts," he said, his smile sheepish. Audrey knelt, her voice soft. "Did you have fun, Sky?" "Yep," Skylar said. "He didn't even get mad when I spilled glitter." Audrey glanced at Samuel, her eyes narrowing. "Glitter's a nightmare," she said, her tone dry. He chuckled, a sound that stirred something in her, a memory of nights when his laugh had been hers. "I deserved worse," he said. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. The center's director, a woman named Lena with a warm voice, pulled Audrey aside one day. "He's been helping out," she said. "Fixed a robot for the STEM class, didn't even mention his name." Audrey sipped her tea. "He's trying." Lena nodded. "You okay with it?" Audrey's lips twitched. "I haven't said I'm not." Samuel's family, a dynasty of old money from Connecticut, began to notice his absence from San Francisco. His mother, Eleanor Reed, called, her voice sharp through the phone. "You're throwing away your legacy for what a woman who left you." Samuel's jaw tightened. "She didn't leave me, Mother." I pushed her away. Eleanor's silence was cold. "You're a Reed. You don't chase shadows." He hung up his heart, heavy but resolute. He wasn't chasing shadows. He was chasing truth. One rainy Thursday, Samuel stood soaked under the awning, his hoodie clinging to his frame. Audrey rushed Skylar out, shielding her with her coat. "Mommy, my socks." Skylar laughed, splashing in puddles. Samuel stepped forward, offering his umbrella. "I parked close," he said. Audrey paused, then took it, her fingers brushing his. "Thanks," she said, her voice soft. They walked to her car, Skylar giggling under the shield. Samuel stayed behind, rain dripping down his face, watching them drive away. Skylar leaned forward. "Mommy, can the glue pants man come with us?" Audrey's heart dropped. She glanced at Samuel, still standing in the rain. "Not today, baby," she said, her voice a whisper of possibility. Atlanta's autumn draped the city in hues of amber and crimson, the leaves whispering secrets as they fell. The air carried a crispness that softened the edges of summer's intensity, mirroring the subtle shift in Audrey Sinclair's heart. Her midtown apartment, once a fortress of solitude, now hummed with the warmth of routine. Skylar's laughter, the scent of lavender from a diffuser, the soft clatter of crayons on the kitchen table. Audrey had built this life with her own hands, each brick laid with defiance against the betrayal that had driven her from San Francisco 5 years ago. Yet Samuel Reed, the man who had once reduced her to a footnote, was weaving himself into the fabric of her days, his presence as persistent as the city's heartbeat. Samuel had become a fixture at the community center, his jeans flecked with paint, his winter blue eyes softened by humility. He didn't arrive with grand gestures or promises. He came with quiet consistency, helping Skylar craft paper spaceships, reading to the younger children, wiping down tables after art classes. Audrey watched from a distance, her gaze sharp but curious, noting the way Skylar's shoulders relaxed when Samuel praised her ideas, the way her daughter's giggles grew brighter in his presence. Skylar, now 5, was a constellation of Audrey's resilience and Samuel's features, her curls a cascade of midnight, her eyes a mirror of his, her spirit a flame that burned with questions. One October afternoon, the community center buzzed with the chaos of a painting event. Skylar, elbow-deep in acrylics, smeared blue and orange streaks across a canvas that looked like a dreamscape of rainbows and pizza. Audrey stood near the door chatting with Lena, the center's director, when Skylar's voice cut through the noise. "Daddy, help me with the green." The room stilled, a collective breath held. Audrey froze, her heart, a drumbeat echoing in her chest. Samuel blinked, his brush hovering his face, a canvas of awe and fear. Skylar, oblivious to the weight of her words, focused on her painting, her tongue poking out in concentration. Samuel moved slowly, dipping the brush in green, guiding Skylar's hand to complete her rainbow pizza masterpiece. Audrey's eyes burned, but she didn't look away. She crossed her arms, her navy sweater, a shield against the vulnerability, creeping into her bones. Later, as they packed up, she pulled Samuel aside, her voice low. "You heard her, didn't you?" He nodded, his throat tight. "I did. She's never said that before." Audrey said, her gaze piercing. Don't make her take it back. His eyes met hers, steady and raw. I won't. The moment lingered, a fragile thread, weaving them together. Skylar's word daddy was a spark igniting something in Audrey she hadn't dared name. She didn't trust Samuel fully, not yet, but she couldn't deny the warmth in Skylar's smile, the way her daughter reached for him without fear. Samuel's presence was no longer an intrusion. It was a question one Audrey wasn't ready to answer, but couldn't ignore. His family, however, was a storm on the horizon. Eleanor Reed. Samuel's mother had called again, her voice a blade of disapproval. You're risking everything she'd said, her Connecticut accent sharp. Your company, your reputation for a child you barely know. Samuel's response was quiet but firm. She's my daughter, Mother, and Audrey is her world. Eleanor's silence was colder than winter, a warning of the pressure to come. Samuel's older brother Charles, a hedge fund manager with their father's ruthlessness, had already begun whispering to Vital Sync's investors, questioning Samuel's focus. The company's board was restless, their faith in him tied to his ability to maintain an untarnished image. Audrey sensed the tension, though Samuel never spoke of it. She saw it in the way his jaw tightened during phone calls, the way his eyes lingered on Skylar, as if memorizing her. One evening, as they walked to Audrey's car, after a center event, Skylar skipping ahead with a paper kite, Samuel paused. They don't understand, he said, his voice low, almost to himself. Audrey raised an eyebrow. Who? He hesitated, then met her gaze. My family. They think I'm throwing away my legacy. She stopped, her heart a tangle of empathy and caution. And what do you think? He looked at Skylar, her kite fluttering in the breeze. I think my legacy's right there, and I've already lost too much time. Audrey's breath caught, but she didn't soften. You don't get to claim her because you feel guilty, Samuel. She's not a prize to redeem you. He nodded, his eyes heavy. I know. I'm not here for absolution. I'm here for her. And for you if you'll let me. She didn't respond, just opened the car door for Skylar, her silence, a boundary he respected. But as she drove away, Skylar's voice broke through. Mommy, Mr. T's nice. Can he come over for grilled cheese? Audrey's lips twitched, a smile she couldn't suppress. Maybe, baby. We'll see. The invitation came unexpectedly, a Tuesday evening, when the Atlanta sky was bruised with clouds. Audrey had just finished a client call, her laptop glowing in the dim kitchen. Skylar sat at the table drawing stick figures under a rainbow. Samuel stood outside the center holding a tray of takeout from a local soul food spot. Audrey raised an eyebrow, her voice dry. Trying to bribe me with sweet potato fries? He smiled, a flicker of the boyish charm she'd once loved. Skylar said you like them. The vendor was closing early. She glanced at the tray. Is there ketchup? He nodded. She unlocked her car. Then don't just stand there. At home, the kitchen smelled of thyme and warmth. Skylar sat at the table, her feet swinging, ketchup smeared on her chin. These are better than yours. Mommy, she said, giggling. Audrey smirked. They should be. They came in a box. Samuel rolled up his sleeves, finding the dish soap without asking. They moved around each other with the careful grace of dancers learning new steps, their elbows never brushing, their words polite, but waited. Skylar watched cartoons in the living room, her laughter a melody that softened the silence. Samuel looked at her, once his voice a whisper. She's the best thing I never knew I needed. Audrey didn't respond, but her heart stirred, a quiet ripple in a still pond. After dishes, Skylar sprawled on the rug, her drawing kit a chaos of color. Samuel sat at the far end, handing her crayons as she reached his presence, steady but unobtrusive. Audrey watched from the couch, her glass of water cool against her palms. Skylar whispered something, and Samuel laughed, a sound so unguarded it tugged at a memory Audrey had buried. She looked away, her walls trembling, but intact. When Skylar fell asleep, crayons scattered a half-drawn rainbow tucked under her fingers. Samuel draped a blanket over her. "She's knocked out," he whispered. Audrey nodded, her eyes heavy. They sat in the lamplight, the silence thick with unspoken history. "You know why I let you in tonight," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. He waited, his gaze steady, because she smiled today like she used to before the questions. Samuel's eyes glistened, but he didn't speak. "If you ruin that smile," she said, her voice a blade, "I'll walk away faster than I did before." He nodded, his voice barely audible. "I won't." They sat like that, the distance between them a fragile bridge. Skylar snored softly, her warmth a tether. Audrey picked up her daughter's drawing. 3 stick figures, 1 tall, 2 smaller, holding hands. She showed it to Samuel without a word. He took it in his eyes, tracing each stroke like a prayer. "She drew 3 people," he said quietly. "She never used to," Audrey replied. He folded the paper, placing it on the table like a relic. At 9:16 p.m., Audrey stood. "She'll wake up hungry soon. You should go." He nodded, reaching for his jacket. At the door, he paused. "Thank you," he said, his voice raw. "For letting me be in the room," she laughs in. She didn't respond, just watched him leave the door, closing softly behind him. Winter settled over Atlanta like a quiet vow, the air sharp with the promise of change. The city's streets glowed with holiday lights, their flicker mirroring the tentative warmth growing in Audrey Sinclair's heart. Her apartment, once a sanctuary of solitude, now carried traces of Samuel Reed's presence. Skylar's drawings with 3 stick figures, a book he'd left in a brown paper bag, the faint scent of his cedarwood cologne lingering after a visit. Audrey had spent 5 years building a life without him, her resilience a shield against the pain of his betrayal. Yet Samuel's quiet persistence, his willingness to stand in the rain for Skylar, was chipping away at her defenses, leaving her to grapple with a question she'd never dared ask. Could she let him back in? Samuel had made Atlanta his home, renting a modest loft 10 blocks from Audrey's apartment. He didn't announce it, didn't expect her to care, but she noticed the way he arrived at the community center early, his sneakers scuffed from helping kids with projects, his eyes softer with each passing day. He'd traded Silicon Valley's polished boardrooms for Atlanta's vibrant chaos, his billionaire status irrelevant in the face of Skylar's smile. But his family's disapproval loomed, a shadow cast by Eleanor Reed and her son Charles, who saw Samuel's choices as a betrayal of their legacy. They'd begun pressuring Vital Sync's board, whispering doubts about his leadership, threatening to pull funding if he didn't return to San Francisco. At the community center, Samuel was a quiet force. He taught coding to kids who reminded him of Skylar, their eyes bright with possibility. He fixed broken easels, stacked chairs, listened to Skylar's stories about her favorite colors, purple, always purple. Audrey watched from her desk, her heart a battlefield of caution and hope. Skylar, now 6, had begun to seek him out, her questions about Mr. T growing bolder. "Why's he always here, Mommy?" she'd asked one evening, her crayons paused mid-stroke. Audrey smiled, brushing a curl from her daughter's face. "He's trying to be someone we can count on." Skylar nodded, thoughtful. "He stands like he's waiting for a bus." Audrey laughed, the sound a rare release. One November evening, the center hosted a family day at a local park, the air thick with the scent of barbecue and laughter. Skylar wore butterfly wings, her glittery sneakers flashing as she ran. Samuel arrived with juice boxes and a shy grin, his awkward dance moves earning giggles from the kids. Audrey, in a sundress that caught the fading light, sat on a blanket under an oak tree, her lemonade cool against her lips. Skylar tugged her toward Samuel, her voice insistent. "Can we all sit together, please?" They did the blanket a fragile island in a sea of noise. Samuel handed Skylar a snack, his fingers brushing Audrey's as he passed her a cup. The touch was fleeting, but it lingered in her chest, a spark she didn't want to name. As the crowd thinned, Skylar dozed across their laps, her butterfly wings crumpled. Audrey whispered, "She calls you Mr. T." Samuel chuckled, his voice soft. "I like it." She looked at him, her gaze unguarded for the first time. "She asks about you, what you do, what you like, if you prefer chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin." His eyes softened. "What do you tell her?" "The truth," she said, "that we knew each other long ago, that you made a mistake, that you're trying now." He leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "And you? What do you believe?" She stroked Skylar's hair, her voice a whisper. "I believe time reveals people, intentions. Love all of it." The tension with Samuel's family escalated. Charles arrived in Atlanta unannounced, his tailored suit, a stark contrast to the center's warmth. He cornered Samuel outside, his voice low but venomous. "You're throwing away everything Dad built for a kid you didn't even know existed." Samuel's jaw tightened. "She's my daughter, Charles, and Audrey's worth more than any deal." Charles scoffed. "The board's watching. They'll vote you out if you keep this up." Samuel met his brother's gaze unflinching. "Then let them. I'm done living for their approval." Audrey overheard the exchange, her heart pounding as she stood in the doorway. She didn't intervene, but Samuel's words echoed in her mind, a testament to a man she barely recognized. That night, Skylar caught a cold, her cough a soft rattle. Samuel appeared at their apartment with children's cough syrup and a box of dinosaur tissues, his eyes weary but warm. Audrey gave him a side eye. "You're spoiling her." He laughed, a sound that stirred memories of their San Francisco nights. "Let me have this one." She watched him sit beside Skylar, pretending to be her patient, as she checked his heartbeat with a toy stethoscope. "You've got daddy fever," Skylar declared, giggling. Audrey nearly dropped the spoon in her hand. On Skylar's 6th birthday, Audrey planned a quiet celebration: cupcakes, pizza paper hats, a few kids from the center. Samuel arrived early, his arms full of balloons and napkins with glitter stars. Audrey met him at the door, her arms folded. Trying to take over, he shook his head, his smile gentle. "Just backing you up." She watched him tape balloons to the ceiling, Skylar giggling as she supervised. By the time the party started, he blended into the chaos, clapping at Skylar's offbeat dance moves, carrying her when she tired. After the last guest left, Audrey found him sweeping. She took the broom, her voice soft. "I can finish." He smiled, sitting amid the wrapping paper, his presence a quiet anchor. That night, Skylar snuggled under her blanket, clutching a stuffed bear Samuel had brought. "Did you have a good birthday?" Audrey asked, kissing her forehead. "The best," Skylar yawned. "Mommy, does he stay forever now?" Audrey's heart caught. "We don't know yet, baby," she said softly. Skylar whispered, her eyes closing. "I want him to." Samuel didn't leave that night, not because of an invitation, but because Skylar fell asleep holding his hand. Audrey sat nearby, her tea cooling her walls, not high, but curious. At 11:45 p.m., she whispered, "If you're going to keep doing this, there's no room for halfway." He nodded, his voice firm. "I've burned that bridge behind me." She leaned back, exhaling, her heart open, just enough to let the possibility linger. The Atlanta spring unfolded like a love letter, its breezes carrying the scent of blooming jasmine and the promise of renewal. The city pulsed with life, its streets alive with the rhythm of festivals and the laughter of children chasing kites. For Audrey Sinclair, spring was a season of cautious hope, her midtown apartment a sanctuary where Skylar's drawings adorned the walls, each one a testament to a family slowly stitching itself together. 5 years ago, she'd walked away from Samuel Reed, his betrayal, a wound that had shaped her resilience. Now his presence was a quiet thread in her days, woven through Skylar's smiles and the tentative warmth in her own heart. Samuel had become a constant, not in the grand gestures of his Silicon Valley past, but in the small, deliberate acts that spoke louder than words. He arrived at the community center early, his jeans streaked with paint, his winter blue eyes softened by a humility Audrey hadn't known he possessed. He taught Skylar and her friends to code simple games, his laughter mingling with theirs, as they debugged apps about flying unicorns. Skylar, now 6, called him Mr. T, with a grin that lit up the room, her questions about him growing bolder. "Does Mr. T like purple too?" she'd ask, her curls bouncing as she drew. Audrey would smile, her heart a delicate balance of caution and curiosity. "He's learning to," she'd say, her voice soft but steady. But the shadow of Samuel's family loomed, a storm threatening to unravel the fragile bridge they'd built. Eleanor Reed, his mother, and Charles, his ruthless brother, had escalated their campaign against him. VitalSync, Samuel's health tech empire, was at a crossroads, its board divided over his leadership. Charles had convinced key investors that Samuel's focus on Atlanta, on Audrey and Skylar, was a liability. They demanded his return to San Francisco, threatening to vote him out if he didn't comply. Samuel's phone buzzed with ultimatums, his inbox filled with veiled threats. But he didn't waver. "They don't see her," he told Audrey one evening, his voice low as they stood outside the center. "They don't see Skylar or you, or what matters." Audrey's eyes narrowed. "And what about you? What do you see?" He met her gaze unflinching. "Everything I should have seen 5 years ago." The test came unexpectedly, wrapped in an offer that could redefine Samuel's legacy. A conglomerate in San Francisco proposed a merger with VitalSync, a deal that would make it a global leader in health tech. The catch: Samuel would need to relocate permanently, leading the transition from Silicon Valley. The board saw it as a triumph, a chance to cement his name among the elite. Charles called his voice smug. "This is your moment, Sam. Don't throw it away for a kid and a woman who'll never fit our world." Samuel hung up, his jaw tight, his heart pounding with a clarity he'd never known. He didn't want their world, not anymore. He told Audrey about the offer over coffee at a Decatur cafe, the air thick with the scent of roasted beans. Skylar sat nearby, coloring a paper city with Maya, Audrey's friend and confidant. Samuel's hands gripped his mug, his voice steady but raw. "They want me back in San Francisco, full-time." Audrey's heart stilled, but her face remained calm, her navy dress catching the morning light. "And what did you say?" He leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. "I said no. VitalSync is my creation, but Skylar is my daughter. You're my home. I'm not leaving." Her breath caught a flicker of something, hope perhaps stirring in her chest. "You're giving up your company." He shook his head. "I'm choosing my life." Audrey didn't respond immediately, her silence a canvas for her thoughts. She'd spent years protecting Skylar's peace, guarding her own heart. Samuel's words were a promise, but promises had broken her before. "You don't get points for staying," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "You get trust by proving it every day." He He nodded, his eyes wet. I will. Skylar ran over her paper city, flapping. Look, Mommy. Mr. T helped with the robot shop. Samuel smiled, ruffling her curls. You're the architect, Sky. Audrey watched, her heart softening, the weight of his choice settling like a warm breeze. The fallout came swiftly. Charles, enraged by Samuel's refusal, rallied the board, scheduling a vote to oust him as CEO. Eleanor called her voice a blade of ice. You're throwing away our family's legacy for a child who might not even be yours. Samuel's response was calm but unyielding. She's mine, Mother, and so is my choice. He hung up, his hands trembling, but his resolve unshaken. He didn't tell Audrey the full extent of the pressure, but she sensed it in the lines around his eyes, the way he lingered after pickups, as if anchoring himself to Skylar's laughter. One Saturday morning, Samuel arrived at Audrey's apartment with a small box. For Skylar, he said, his voice tentative, and for you. Inside was a self-published children's book, Skylar the Bold, its pages filled with a brown girl with puff ponytails, building apps and climbing trees. Skylar squealed, flipping through it. It's me, she said, her eyes wide. Samuel knelt, his smile soft. You inspired her, Sky. Audrey closed the book gently, her fingers tracing the title. Why this? She asked. He met her gaze. Because I want her to see herself fearless. Brilliant, loved. Her throat tightened, but she only nodded. You're learning. That evening, Skylar insisted on reading the book 3 times, her voice bright with pride. As she drifted to sleep, clutching the book, she whispered, Can Mr. T come to my school? We're making paper cities. Audrey texted him the next day, Tuesday, 10 a.m., room 12. He replied instantly, I'll be there. And he was sitting cross-legged on the classroom floor, glue on his fingers, helping Skylar build a robot ice cream shop. Her classmates giggled, her teacher smiled, and Audrey stood at the door, her arms crossed, her heart a quiet storm. When Skylar ran to her beaming, Audrey knelt. You had fun. Yep, Skylar said. Mr. T says, girls build the best cities. Audrey laughed, a sound that felt like freedom. The board's vote loomed a shadow over Samuel's quiet victories. He didn't share the details, but Audrey overheard him on the phone, his voice low but firm. If they want me out, they'll have to fight for it. I'm not running anymore. She didn't ask, didn't pry, but his words lingered, a testament to a man rewriting his story. One evening, as they walked Skylar to the park, her butterfly wings flapping, Samuel stopped. I'm not the man I was, he said, his voice raw. I know I hurt you, Audrey, but I'm here now, and I'm not leaving. She looked at him, her heart open just enough to let the truth in. Then keep showing it, she said, her voice a whisper of possibility. As spring deepened, so did their rhythm. Samuel joined Skylar's school drop-offs, carrying an extra hair tie, a cinnamon granola bar in his pocket. He didn't push for more, didn't cross boundaries, but his presence was a steady pulse. Skylar began hugging him goodbye, her arms tight, her smile a mirror of his. Audrey noticed her walls not gone, but shifting like petals opening to the sun. One Sunday, as Samuel taught Skylar to ride a bike, her cheers echoing through the park, Audrey clapped, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Good job, baby, she called. Samuel looked at her, his smile tentative. Your turn. She laughed, a real one, her voice warm. Only if you hold the seat for me. He nodded, his eyes bright. Always. Atlanta's summer arrived like a lover's embrace, warm and unyielding, the city awash in the golden glow of long days and soft nights. The streets hummed with the rhythm of life, food trucks, laughter, the distant strum of a guitar. For Audrey Sinclair, the season was a canvas of possibility. Her midtown apartment, a haven where Skylar's laughter painted the walls with joy. 5 years ago, she'd walked away from Samuel Reed, his betrayal, a wound that had forged her strength. Now he was no longer a shadow, but a presence, his quiet devotion, a melody weaving through her days. The question wasn't whether he'd changed it, was whether she could trust the man he'd become. Samuel had made Atlanta his home, his San Francisco empire a distant echo. He'd rented a loft nearby, its simplicity a stark contrast to his billionaire past. At the community center, he was a fixture, his hands stained with marker ink, his winter blue eyes bright with purpose. Skylar, now 6, called him Daddy, with a confidence that stirred Audrey's heart, her curls bouncing as she shared stories of her day. Samuel listened, his presence a steady anchor, his laughter a bridge between past mistakes and present promises. But the weight of his family's disapproval pressed harder, a storm threatening to unravel the life they were building. The Vital Sync board's vote was imminent, Charles and Eleanor orchestrating a campaign to oust Samuel as CEO. They saw his devotion to Skylar and Audrey as a betrayal of their legacy, a threat to the Reed family's power. Charles sent a final ultimatum: return to San Francisco or lose everything. Samuel read the email in the quiet of his loft, his jaw tight, his heart clear. He typed a response, his words unyielding. I've built Vital Sync, but I've found my family. Choose who you want to lead, but I'm not leaving. He hit send, his future uncertain, but his choice resolute. Audrey sensed the storm, though Samuel shielded her from its details. She saw it in the way he lingered after pickups, the way his hands tightened around his phone. One evening, as they sat on her porch, Skylar asleep inside, he told her the truth. They're voting tomorrow, he said, his voice low, the city's lights flickering behind him. If I lose, Vital Sync's gone. Audrey's heart stilled, but her voice was steady. And what does that mean for you? He looked at her, his eyes raw. It means I'm free. Free to be here with you and Skylar without their chains. She leaned back, her navy sundress catching the moonlight. Freedom's not enough, Samuel. It's what you do with it. The next day, the board voted. Samuel was out, replaced by a corporate veteran, handpicked by Charles. The news hit the tech blogs, whispers of his distractions spreading like wildfire. He didn't read them. Instead, he showed up at the community center helping Skylar and her friends build a paper rocket. Audrey watched, her heart a quiet storm. Later, as they walked to her car, Skylar swinging between them, she asked, "You're okay?" He nodded, his smile soft. "I've never been better." She didn't press, but his words lingered, a promise she was beginning to believe. Their rhythm deepened, a dance of trust and time. Samuel joined Skylar's school events, braiding her hair with clumsy fingers, earning her giggles and Audrey's laughter. One Saturday, he arrived with a proposal, not a ring, but a grant in Skylar's name, funding STEM scholarships for girls from single-mother households. Audrey read the proposal, her fingers tracing the words. "Why this?" she asked, her voice soft. He met her gaze. "Because I want Skylar to grow up knowing success doesn't mean hiding love. And because you showed me what matters." Her throat tightened, but she only nodded, her heart open wider than it had ever been. Halloween came. Skylar dressed as a coding superhero, her cardboard laptop painted with stars. Audrey wore sneakers and a candy bag. Samuel, a robot dad, with blinking lights taped to his shirt. They trick-or-treated as a trio, Skylar's laughter echoing through the streets. A neighbor asked, "Is this your family?" Audrey glanced at Samuel, Then at Skylar, her heart full. Yes, she said, and meant it. That night, as Skylar slept, Samuel whispered, "You're everything I never knew I needed." Audrey replied, her voice steady. "You had to lose me to see me." He nodded, stepping closer. "And I won't let go." She didn't pull away, her heart resting in the space between them. By Thanksgiving, they shared more than holidays, mornings of burnt pancakes, Skylar's math obsession, quiet evenings on the couch. One Sunday, Skylar climbed into bed between them, her crayon drawing of a house labeled "Our Home." Samuel pointed, his voice teasing, "You forgot the puppy." Audrey laughed, her eyes bright. "You just want to avoid proposing." He reached into the drawer, pulling out a velvet box. "Actually," he said, opening it to reveal a simple ring, its diamond catching the light. "Not because we need it, but because I want to honor what we are." "Will you marry me?" Skylar jumped. "Say yes, Mommy." Audrey nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I will." 6 months later, under a canopy of lights in their Atlanta backyard, Audrey and Samuel exchanged vows. Audrey wore a white dress, simple but radiant. Skylar the flower girl and ring bearer, her curls adorned with daisies. Their vows were brief, but heavy with truth. Samuel, Audrey said, her voice clear. "I walked away once and you learned to walk back. Thank you for opening the door." He smiled, his eyes wet. "Audrey, I once thought success was power. You showed me it's love. I'll stand beside you always." The guests applauded, but the moment was theirs, a circle completed not by perfection, but by choice. Skylar's kindergarten graduation came a month later, her cap tilted, her sneakers sparkling. Samuel held wildflowers, his eyes searching the crowd, until he found Audrey, her polka dot dress, a beacon. Skylar ran across the stage, waving both arms. "Mommy, Daddy." The words echoed, a testament to a family forged through time. As they walked home, Skylar skipping ahead, Samuel whispered, "Thank you for letting me earn this." Audrey reached for his hand. "Thank you for staying long enough to mean it." Their legacy grew beyond their home. Audrey and Samuel launched the Skylar Sinclair Grant funding STEM education for girls in Atlanta's underserved communities. At the community center, they mentored young coders, their hands guiding, their hearts open. Skylar, now 7, drew a new family portrait, 3 figures under a rainbow, a puppy at their feet. Her teacher asked, "Who's this?" Skylar smiled, "The ones who stayed." This is Audrey's story, a testament to resilience, love, and the power of choice. If her journey moves you, if you've ever rebuilt a life from broken pieces or trusted again after betrayal, share your story in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, and join us in celebrating the beauty of second chances, the strength of self-worth, and the families we choose to build.